Welcome, dear friends. In this video, I will speak about happiness, and you will learn about 3 kinds of happiness. The second thing that you will learn is about the normal happiness that we usually try for. What is really the nature of such happiness? Then the third thing that you will learn is what is actually the highest happiness, and the fourth thing, how to achieve the highest happiness. So I would like to speak on the basis of a book which is called Nectar of Devotion. And this book, Nectar of Devotion, speaks about pure Bhakti yoga practice, and also about Bhakti and achieving the highest goal, which is prema, or love of God. So when we are speaking about happiness, I have to say that happiness is very important because every one of us is trying to be happy. This is actually really one of the purposes, if not the greatest purpose of our life, to be happy. Do you agree? So we are all endeavoring to become happy, but we mostly don't know about different kinds of happiness that we should endeavor for. So first I will speak about the happiness which we normally endeavor for. And this is the material happiness. This is happiness which comes about when we are materially well situated, which means, first of all, when we are healthy, if we are attractive, beautiful, if we are educated, if we have enough wealth, we are financially well-to-do, and also if our relationships are successful, meaning that we have a nice family with nice children and a nice circle of friends, and then we can actually enjoy life. So this is actually the concept of happiness that majority of people in this world has. So we are endeavoring to achieve this kind of happiness, but little do we know about the real scientific truths about the nature of this happiness. And the nature of this happiness is actually described in the book called Bhagavad-Gita as it is, the ancient yoga textbook, which is actually describing that this happiness, which comes about by the contact of the senses, when our senses are in touch with different sense objects, such happiness has a beginning and has an end. And at the end, it turns into poison. And therefore, a person who is really wise, who is really learned, does not endeavor for such happiness. So what does this mean? I will give you an example. So you're trying for happiness to attract the most desirable partner into your life. So the most attractive lady or a man who is beautiful, educated, intelligent, wealthy, and who likes you, who adores you. So, and you may be even successful in obtaining such a, such a match, which is actually, it is not so easy, but sometimes it happens to find such a mate. But if we now fast forward, like maybe even like just a few years ahead, what happens then? There are countless examples of what happens after a few years in such a marriage, which in the beginning might looked like an ideal marriage, like ideal partners. But after some time, this very person who was the source of your happiness and pleasure in the beginning may turn into the source of pain and distress. Lady perhaps is not attractive anymore, especially if she has given birth to 1, 2, or more children, or gained weight, or because of stress lost her beauty. And even the character may change, or maybe the character was already there in the beginning, but it was not so noticeable. But through some years, it becomes very much noticeable. Also, all the characteristics of a person which are not so nice. And after all, many people find out after some time that their partner is actually aggressive. It may be actually abusive, not only verbally or emotionally, but even physically abusive. This is experience that so many people have had. So in this case, the very person whom you have thought is the source of your happiness and pleasure becomes the source of your pain and suffering. In the same way, there are other examples. For example, you desire to have your own house. Finally, after living in a small, tiny apartment where there was not enough place for you and your family, where there were noisy neighbors all around, now finally you have achieved the goal of having your own house. But what happens then? This is a big house, and maybe you have to pay a big mortgage. And then some things may happen. Maybe the house was not new, and you have to make the repairs, and they cost you additional money, so much money. And sometimes also you may want to rent some portion of the house, and you get some really terrible people to rent this place from you, which just give you headache and cause immense financial loss as well. So in all such cases, the very thing that you thought will bring you pleasure and happiness turns against you after some time and brings you pain and suffering. So this is why the ancient sages warn us that we should not endeavor, that we should not put all our faith in this material happiness, because it is short-lived, it is temporary, and at the end it turns into misery. But now you may ask, well, but what is the alternative? Is there any other happiness? Yes, there is. There is the second kind of happiness, and the second kind of happiness is called Brahmananda. For some of you who are more spiritually inclined, you might have heard about this word. Brahmananda actually means spiritual happiness, which is connected with Brahman, or this is the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth. And yes, it is possible to achieve this Brahmananda, but this is not very easy. One has to really take up a spiritual process, and the spiritual process of impersonal self-realization is quite rigid and difficult to achieve, but some people may achieve it. And when they do achieve, they actually gain spiritual bliss, spiritual ecstasy, and complete relief of material suffering, of material pains. But there is one problem. And this problem is that when a person achieves this kind of liberation, impersonal revelation, and actually merges into the impersonal Brahman as a soul, then he remains in this illumined Brahman effulgence like a tiny little spark, a soul. And although he or she feels great bliss, ananda, still, after some time, there is experience of something lacking. And what is this lacking? This is the inability to exchange love. Because in the Brahman effulgence, the soul is just floating there and cannot be active, cannot have any interpersonal association, although there are many such souls, but everybody is just alone there, just absorbed in his own ananda, own bliss, but cannot really have any interaction with another person. But the soul is actually a very personal being. And every single one of us desires to love and to receive love, to have loving exchange. This is actually the highest happiness. And this is not possible in this Brahman effulgence. And this is why after some time, souls inevitably fall down from this position. And they usually fall down again into material life and engage in material activities. But there is also a third kind of happiness. And the third kind of happiness is the happiness of bhakti. And this is what I really want to speak about today. The happiness of bhakti is the highest happiness that exists in the entire creation. The happiness of bhakti is so great that if you multiply the bliss or ananda of impersonal liberation trillion-fold, you still cannot achieve even one atomic portion of the ocean of happiness that you can have in bhakti. And why bhakti gives this highest happiness? Bhakti gives this highest happiness because bhakti reveals our true nature, which is a loving nature, which is a very personal nature. And bhakti gives us the opportunity to fully express our ability to love and be loved. And we as a soul can fully express this ability towards the Supreme Soul or the Supreme Absolute Truth. And this is what bhakti really allows us to do. And it really depends also on one's progress on the path of bhakti, because we may be a complete beginner on the path of bhakti, we may be somewhere in the intermediate stage, or somebody can be in an advanced stage or even at the stage of perfection. So it depends on our advancement in bhakti, how much happiness we can really experience. And believe me, even in the very beginning of practice of bhakti, a person can experience a superior sense of happiness, a higher taste, a more refined happiness than any other happiness one has experienced in the material life. And this happiness one experiences when one engages in the activities of bhakti, which are all connected with the Supreme Soul. and which are the activities of hearing and chanting, of hearing the mantra, the sacred mantra, which consists of the sacred names of God or the Supreme Soul, and of hearing about different activities, pastimes, and even philosophical instructions which are related to the Supreme Absolute Truth. And by discussing about these things, and also by meditating on these things, remembering on these things, and also by engaging in practical activities, practical services, which are dedicated to the pleasure of the Supreme Soul, with a desire to please the Supreme Soul. So all these activities actually awaken in our heart a superior sense of happiness. And of course, I can speak about it a lot, but this is something that you on your own need to try and need to experience and have this experience for yourself. And now, of course, you may be wondering how you can achieve this happiness. So you can achieve this happiness in a very simple way, but just starting on the path of bhakti. And actually, you're already starting on the path of bhakti just by listening to these videos on this YouTube channel, by listening to the videos about topics like, what is bhakti, and even other topics about how we are the soul. These are all the topics that are related with the Supreme Absolute Truth. And they already started you on the path of bhakti. And then if you are interested and if you are enthusiastic, then you can make one big step further by starting to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. And there is a video on this channel, Bhakti Yoga Online, about the Hare Krishna mantra, and I strongly recommend you to listen to this and actually listen to the entire playlist of videos about the mantra meditation, because you will learn so much and they will get you started on this path. And once you start doing this, things will start happening in your life. You will start meeting people who also practice this bhakti yoga, and more doors will open to you on the spiritual path. And in this way, you will start to experience this superior spiritual happiness. And as you progress, the happiness will just become greater and more intense. If we look farther on the level of bhava, which is very elevated stage of bhakti yoga, the experience of happiness is so intense that the impersonal happiness can just hide in comparison to this happiness of bhava. And if you go even farther and achieve the highest goal, prema bhakti, then the experience of happiness is unlimited. It is actually so great and so intense that you can really only experience it in fullness in your spiritual body. And at that point, you also reach the spiritual realm, the realm of eternal blissful life. So I will stop here, and I would really like to hear from you. If you have any questions, any comments, please write, and I will answer you with great happiness. Thank you very much. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos of this kind.